You've got one shot at this life. One, no do-overs, no dress rehearsals, no next time. And yet most people live like they've got forever, walking through life half awake, chasing comfort, avoiding risk, settling for a version of themselves that's only a fraction of what they could be. I want you to think about this for a moment. If today was the last day of your life, would you be proud of how you lived it? Or would you feel that quiet ache inside, the voice whispering, I could have been more, I could have done more, that voice? That's not your doubt. That's your potential screaming at you. It's the part of you that refuses to die in mediocrity, the part that knows you were made for something greater. Because here's the truth. Most people don't fail because they aim too high and miss. They fail because they aim too low and hit. They trade their fire for familiarity. They live in the safety of good enough when they were born to be extraordinary. You've got one life, one shot. Don't waste it playing small. Most people walk through life like they've got time. They wake up, scroll through their phones, go to work, complain, come home, eat, sleep, and repeat day after day, month after month, year after year. And then one day they look in the mirror and realize that life has passed them by. They were waiting for the perfect moment, waiting to feel ready, waiting for permission. But that moment never came because there is no perfect time. There's only now. Life isn't a rehearsal. You don't get to come back and try again. This is the show. This is the one shot you've got. You see, we've been conditioned to live cautiously. We're told to play it safe, to think practically, to not take risk because we might fail. But what nobody tells you is that playing it safe is the most dangerous thing you can do. Playing small doesn't protect you. It poisons you. That quiet feeling of emptiness you sometimes get, that restlessness that keeps you up at night, that's your soul reminding you that you're not meant to live on autopilot. That's life trying to shake you awake. Every single one of us was born with potential that could shake the world, but potential means nothing if you never use it. You weren't born to just survive. You were born to create, to expand, to love, to lead, to leave a mark. The tragedy isn't that people die. The tragedy is that most people never truly live. They exist in this gray zone between comfort and fear, between what they want and what they settle for. They tell themselves someday, but someday never comes. I've seen people wait their whole lives for the right opportunity and then die with their dream still inside them. And you know what hurts the most? It's not failure, it's regret. Regret is the real pain because regret is realizing that the life you could have lived was always within reach, but you let it slip away because fear felt safer than freedom. You've got to wake yourself up and ask, what am I doing with my time? Because time is the one thing you can't buy back. You can make more money. You can rebuild relationships. You can recover from mistakes. But when the clock runs out, that's it. No matter who you are, rich or poor, every one of us gets 24 hours in a day. The difference between those who live fully and those who merely exist is how they use those hours. The truth is, most people live as though life is happening all to them, not for them. They believe they're trapped by their circumstances, when in reality they're trapped by their mindset. They've built walls of limitation around themselves, walls made of excuses, stories, and fear, and those walls become their comfort zone. But comfort zones are prisons disguised as peace. They keep you safe, but they also keep you small. I've met people who've gone through hell, real pain, loss, heartbreak, and still came out with fire in their eyes because they made a decision. They decided that their story wasn't going to end in the middle. They decided that pain was going to push them, not paralyze them. Because at any moment, your life can change with one decision, the decision to wake up and start living fully. You can't keep waiting for clarity before you act. Clarity comes from action, not thought. You move first and the path appears. Life rewards those who dare to move, not those who wait for the perfect plan. So if there's something inside you that you've been putting off, a dream, a conversation, a change, do it. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, there's a point when you realize that life doesn't owe you anything. It's not about what you deserve. It's about what you're willing to go after. You have to take ownership of your life. You have to say, this is my time, this is my story, and I'm not leaving anything on the table. Because if you don't claim your power, life will pass you by quietly, politely, without resistance. And that's the scariest part. Not that you might fail, but that you might succeed in living a life that doesn't fulfill you. So, wake up. Don't sleepwalk through the only life you'll ever have. This moment, right here, right now, is your wake-up call. Every second that passes is a reminder that the clock is ticking. The question is, what will you do with the time you have left? And because you've got one life, and it's happening right now, sex comfort, it's such a beautiful illusion, isn't it? It feels good. It feels safe. It feels familiar. But comfort is the silent killer of dreams. It whispers, you're fine. You're doing enough. You don't need to push harder. And before you know it, that whisper becomes your reality. You stop chasing. You stop growing. You stop feeling alive. Comfort doesn't announce its arrival. It slowly wraps around you like a warm blanket until you can't tell the difference between peace and paralysis. Think about it. Every breakthrough you've ever had in life came from a moment of discomfort, a moment where you were uncertain, scared, maybe even on the edge of giving up. That's where growth lives. That's where transformation begins. But most people spend their lives running from those moments because they're addicted to comfort. They build their entire identity around avoiding pain instead of chasing purpose. They want the reward without the risk, the progress without the pressure. But life doesn't work that way. You can't reach the next level while clinging to the one you're comfortable in. You can't step into your greatness while holding on to your excuses. The comfort zone is seductive. It gives you a sense of control, a feeling that you're okay. But deep down, you know you're not, because the human spirit wasn't built for comfort. It was built for challenge. It was built to stretch, to strive, to overcome. Without struggle, there's no strength. Without resistance, there's no power. Most people don't even realize how much comfort has numbed them. They wake up, follow the same routine, talk about the same problems, and convince themselves that it's just how life is. They call it stability, but it's really stagnation. They say they're content, but they're just afraid. Afraid to fail, afraid to look foolish, afraid to start again, afraid to find out what they're truly capable of if they gave it everything they had. You know what's crazy? People will go through decades of quiet misery just to avoid a few moments of discomfort. They'll stay in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, and habits that destroy them because it's easier than facing uncertainty. But the truth is, the pain of discipline, the pain of growth is temporary. The pain of regret lasts forever. So you have to make a decision. What do you want, more comfort or change? Because you can't have both. Every great story, every great leader, every great transformation was born from a moment when someone said, enough. When someone decided that mediocrity was no longer acceptable. That the temporary pain of change was worth the permanent pain of staying the same. I've met people who've turned their entire lives around not because they had everything figured out, but because they were finally honest with themselves. They admitted that comfort had made them complacent. They recognized that the life they were living wasn't the one they were meant for. And in that honesty, something shifted. That spark came back. That hunger reignited. Because when you stop lying to yourself about being okay, that's when the fire starts to burn again. You can't transform your life in the same environment that made you settle. You've got to step into the unknown. You've got to lean into the discomfort. Because that's where your next level is waiting. The world outside your comfort zone isn't easy. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of challenges. But it's also where you find your power, your passion, your purpose. The people who live extraordinary lives aren't the ones who never feel fear. They're the ones who feel it and move anyway. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. If you're not scared, you're not stretching. Growth doesn't feel good in the moment. It feels uncertain, awkward, even painful. But that's the price of becoming more, because every time you push through fear, you build strength. Every time you act in spite of doubt, you expand your identity. You become someone new, someone unstoppable. Comfort wants you to stay small. It wants you to play safe, to keep dreaming but never doing. But deep down, you know you're meant for more. You can feel it. That restlessness, that frustration, that internal pull, it's not a sign something's wrong. It's a sign you're being called to grow. It's your soul trying to remind you of who you really are before the world convinced you to play small. The real question is, are you willing to trade short-term comfort for long-term fulfillment? Are you willing to step into the fire knowing that it will forge you into someone stronger, someone freer, someone alive? Because when you do, life opens up in ways you can't even imagine. Discomfort is where dreams die. Discomfort is where destiny is born. Choose wisely, because there's something inside every one of us that gets buried under the noise of daily life. A hunger, a fire, a raw, unstoppable energy that once drove us when we were kids, when we believed anything was possible. But somewhere along the way, we stopped feeding that hunger. We let routine, fear, and the opinions of others smother it. We started to accept good enough as our ceiling. And when that hunger fades, so does the spark that makes life worth living. You've got to reignite that hunger, that deep emotional drive that pulls you towards something bigger than yourself. Because nothing changes until you get hungry again. I'm not talking about a mild interest or a wish or a hope. I'm talking about obsession. the kind of hunger that consumes you, that gets you up early and keeps you up late, the kind that doesn't take no for an answer, the kind that doesn't care about convenience, comfort, or the approval of others. Hunger is what turns a dream into a mission. It's what separates the average from the unstoppable. People say they want change, but most don't mean it. They want the result, not the process. They want the reward, but they're not hungry enough to go through the grind. The truth is, your level of hunger will determine your level of success. When you want something badly enough, when it becomes non-negotiable, you find a way. You don't wait for motivation. You create it. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You make it happen. Hunger turns the impossible into inevitable. Every person who's ever done something extraordinary wasn't necessarily the smartest, the richest, or the most talented. They were the hungriest. They had a fire that couldn't be put out. They refused to settle. They refused to stop. They understood that the world doesn't give you what you deserve. It gives you what you demand through your actions, your consistency, and your intensity. That hunger comes from purpose. You can't fake it. You can't borrow it. It comes from connecting to something that matters deeply to you. What drives you? What keeps you awake at night? What would you fight for if everything else was taken away? Until you find that why, you'll always struggle to find the energy to go all in. But when you do find it, when your purpose becomes clear, nothing can stop you. You've got to stop waiting for passion to find you. Passion is not something you stumble upon. It's something you build. It's the reward of giving your full self to something meaningful. When you push through fear, when you endure struggle, when you grow beyond who you used to be, that's where passion lives. It's built through the process of commitment. But most people have lost that connection. They wake up tired, not because they're physically exhausted, but because they're emotionally empty. They're busy, but not fulfilled. They're moving, but not progressing. And the reason is simple. There's no fire behind what they do. They've replaced hunger with habit. They're living by default instead of design. You've got to break that pattern. You've got to remind yourself of what's at stake. Life will not reward hesitation. It rewards hunger. It rewards the person who refuses to quit, the person who shows up again and again when others stop. When you're hungry, you stop negotiating with your goals. You don't ask, can I do it? You decide, I will. Hunger gives you power over procrastination. It turns fear into focus. It transforms obstacles into fuel. If you've ever wondered why some people seem unstoppable, it's not luck. It's drive. They've made the decision to live with urgency, to live with passion. They've decided that average is not an option. You can't coach hunger. You can't fake it, but you can awaken it. It's inside you right now, buried under doubt and distraction. You just have to remember what you're fighting for. So ask yourself, what's your fire? What's the thing you would chase even if it scared you? Because that's where your potential lies. When you find it, feed it every day with discipline, with gratitude, with intensity. Protect it from the voices that tell you to slow down, to settle, to be realistic. Realistic has never changed the world. Hunger has. The truth is, you don't need more time, more resources, or more luck. You need more hunger. Because when you're truly hungry, you'll find a way through anything. You'll make things happen that others call impossible. And that's when life opens up, not for the comfortable, not for the cautious, but for the hungry. Stay hungry, because that's where greatness begins. Most people never live an extraordinary life because they're trapped in a mindset that tells them they can't. They've been programmed to think small, to play safe, to believe that there's not enough time, not enough money, not enough talent, not enough luck. That's the psychology of scarcity. It's that quiet voice that says, people like me don't get to live that kind of life, or it's easy for them, but not for me. And that voice is lying, because the moment you start believing that life is limited, you start acting limited. You stop trying, you stop dreaming, and you start settling. The truth is, the world doesn't limit you, your mindset does. You see, every thought you think, every belief you hold, every story you tell yourself is shaping your reality. If you believe you're powerless, you won't act. If you believe opportunity is rare, you won't see it when it's right in front of you. The world becomes a mirror reflecting what you believe about yourself. If you think small, life will shrink to fit your thinking. But when you think big, when you believe in possibilities instead of limitations, life expands in ways you can't even imagine. It all begins with how you see yourself. Most people think life happens to them. They think they're reacting to circumstances when in reality, they're creating them through their mindset. If you walk into a day expecting problems, you'll find them. If you walk into that same day expecting growth, you'll find opportunities disguised as challenges. Your brain is wired to find what it believes in. So if you want to change your life, you've got to change the lens you see it through. That's why the psychology of more is so powerful. It's about living from a place of possibility instead of fear. It's not blind optimism, it's emotional mastery. It's the ability to see the world as abundant, not because it's easy, but because you choose to focus on what empowers you instead of what drains you. When you live from a scarcity mindset, you make decisions out of fear. But when you live from abundance, you make decisions out of faith. And that shift changes everything. I've seen people with nothing turn their lives around, not because their circumstances magically changed, but because their psychology did. They stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, what can I learn from this? How can I use this? That one shift turns victims into visionaries. It turns pain into power, because the moment you decide that life is happening for you, not to you, you take your power back. Scarcity makes you hold on tight to your money, your time, your emotions. You start protecting what little you think you have instead of creating more. But the people who live with abundance give, grow, and expand. They know that life rewards contribution, not conservation. The more value you create, the more value flows back to you. It's a cycle. Give more, become more, receive more. That's how the psychology of abundance works. When you operate from scarcity, you fear losing. When you operate from abundance, you focus on building. Scarcity says, there's not enough. Abundance says, I'll find a way. Scarcity freezes you, abundance frees you. It's the difference between people who live their dreams and people who only talk about them. The people who win aren't necessarily more talented. They just think differently. They believe that no matter what happens, they'll figure it out. And that belief gives them the courage to act. The crazy thing is, both scarcity and abundance are self-fulfilling prophecies. Whatever you believe, you'll prove yourself right. If you think life is hard and unfair, you'll collect evidence of that everywhere you look. But if you believe life is full of opportunity, you'll start noticing doors you never saw before. Your mind will find ways to make your beliefs real. That's why it's so important to guard what you feed it, because whatever story you tell yourself becomes the foundation of your life. So if you want to change your life, stop focusing on what you lack and start focusing on what you can create. Stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I succeed? Start expecting more from yourself and from life, because you get what you tolerate. If you tolerate scarcity, you'll live small. But if you demand expansion, if you expect abundance, if you live with that unstoppable belief that life is working for you, you'll start to experience breakthroughs that once seemed impossible. The only limits that exist are the ones you accept. And the moment you stop accepting them, the moment you start believing that more is possible, the world opens up in ways you never thought it could. As you are not limited by life, you are limited by belief. Change that, and you change everything. Your life changes the moment you decide it must. Not when things get easier, not when circumstances become perfect. It changes the second you raise your standards and refuse to settle for less than you're capable of. Every breakthrough in your life begins with one decision, a real one. Not a wish, but a moment where you draw a line in the sand and say, this is it, I'm done living this way. That's the power of decision. That's where transformation begins. Most people never make real decisions. They make preferences. They say, I'd like to be healthier, or I'd like to be happier, or I'd like to be successful. But when it gets uncomfortable, when it gets inconvenient, they go right back to what's familiar. A decision means you cut off every other option. The word itself comes from the Latin root decidere, which means to cut off. When you decide, you're not leaving yourself a way out, you're committing fully. And when you do that, life starts to move differently. See, life responds to certainty. When you make a decision with absolute conviction, the world bends to meet that energy. People feel it. Opportunities align with it. Because the universe rewards decisiveness, not hesitation, not indecision, but clarity. And clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from deciding. You don't wait for perfect conditions to act. You act, and through that action, the path becomes clear. We all have moments where we know something needs to change. In our health, our relationships, our mindset, our career. But instead of deciding, we wait, we think, we hesitate. We tell ourselves stories about why it's not the right time. And what's really happening is fear is running the show. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of losing control. But here's the truth: indecision is a decision. It's a decision to stay the same. It's a decision to give up your power. You want to know the difference between people who succeed and people who stay stuck? It's not luck, it's standards. Successful people demand more from themselves. They don't just hope life will change, they decide to change it. They hold themselves to a higher standard, and they don't negotiate with their excuses. They don't allow their emotions to dictate their commitment. They know that discipline is the bridge between